as we keep talking, for everyone to dig into their own knowledge that they bring to the table and maybe address, how do we unstuck us? How do we, let's bring to the table what we are, let's bring out what we are bringing to the table. Lise, you want to?
Thank you. I wanted to remark that there is an ideal of where we want to be. And I know as a psychiatrist, and certainly from personal experience, that change occurs very slowly in people. So our ideal is one thing, and we can want with all our hearts to be a certain way, but there's a lag time. So one of the things that I think might be useful is if we start getting real practical here, and we break up what our strategies might be going forward in bite-sized pieces, and maybe we look at what we're strategizing over between now and, let's say, 2015, the Paris talks, and then maybe thereafter, or maybe in smaller chunks. I believe that the reality is that religious leaders are great messengers and can speak from the heart in pockets where people have not responded to the science. Scientists, I think we can stipulate, I'm grossly perhaps exaggerating, but to a certain extent, they're not the best messengers. But this faith leaders are. So I think what we need to look at is how do we animate the relationship in very specific ways between now and 2015, where scientists and religious leaders can work on very specific strategies together to find those pockets that are not yet motivated with the particular message that works.
Thank you, Lisa, for that, because I do agree. And just to give a little background of a particular something that I've been involved with, we've been working with students from mostly evangelical Christian colleges, conservative colleges, for several years during their spring break, coming into the coal, mountaintop removal coal areas where there's, we know from Centers for Disease Control studies on that there's a lot of sickness, also a lot of anecdotal stories, sickness, birth defect rates are high, cardiovascular, respiratory diseases, cancer rates are high. But these students come in to do their spring break service, nursing majors, sociology majors, and they come in, they knock on doors, gather these family health histories, do some simple tests. And that helps us out. Several of these have been peer-reviewed and published. However, these students, many of them have major life-changing experiences. They come back almost shell-shocked from the stories they hear as they talk to people of the sickness, and the poverty that's around there and so forth. These are epiphanies. These things shift their whole worldview and change it or deepen their conversion into their own faith. And so the question that we have, that really a strategy, is how can we set the table for life worldview changing views on climate? We know that a lot of people are going to have to change their views, the pressure of politics, policy. How do we set the table? I know in my own life, there's been a number of times, sometimes very quickly, sometimes over a period of time, while my worldview or on certain ways of thinking shifted dramatically. I would see a lot of you people could look back, dig deep and say, yes, I was, as John Newton was a slave ship captain. He wrote the famous song, Amazing Grace, where it says, I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see, because he became an abolitionist, a major leader against the slave trade in England. Mm-hmm. And that is what we are having to face today in climate, in a lot of ways, at least in this country. How do we set the table so that those life-changing changes occur? The word in our scripture is metanoia or repentance, but it's really a way of turning around.
So there's a practical strategy.
My colleague said to me, I need to say something more about it. You see, I think we need to have another seminar with economists and politicians on this table, you see, because they are needed. They are the problem. You see, that's it. We all agree.
Not here.
yeah, they are the problem. You see, I mean, we are on the Titanic. We all agree. There is no disagreement here. Great. But the point I'm making is, if you do not change the political paradigm, which we all subscribe to incidentally, and when the time comes, we do vote, we cast our votes at the time comes. If we don't change that, you're not going to change anything. Because the whole agenda is based on growth.
Right.
And growth means carbon. You see, another point is that we are also misleading ourselves if we concentrate wholly on carbon emissions. Because we are telling ourselves that there is an underlying assumption that if we deal with carbon emissions, I'm not saying everybody thinks like this, but most people do. If we deal with carbon emissions, we will deal with the problem. But if we deal with carbon emissions, we would still want to maintain our living standards, won't we? Of course we will. You see, other thing is we don't want to lose what we have. We don't want to lose this. We've got a good standard of living, folks. Let's keep it up.
So how do we transition
we don't want-
gracefully?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it could raise taxation, carbon taxes. Now, this is very unpopular. Any government that proposes carbon taxes and raises taxation
Yep.
have no chance of being elected.
Yep.
You see? So now here, we're coming full circle. We're coming full circle. Now, this is where we can use the faith dimension to tell people, be conscious of what we are doing and get them, work them up into a mindset where they have to say to themselves, yes, we all have to individually tighten our belts so that our children can survive in the future. If we don't do
Yes.
that, we're not going to solve anything.